Welcome to the Flight Club Podcast, a woman's guide to leaning out. We give you a behind-the-scenes look at business launch and growth through the stories of successful female entrepreneurs. Here's your host, Felina Hansen, founder and CEO of Hera Hub.
Hello and welcome. I am excited to share my conversation today with Kate Carney. Kate is an experienced business consultant, lawyer, and strategic advisor. Today, she helps female founders scale businesses they love and make the money they deserve. She works alongside her clients, creating high-performance cultures through strong leadership, talent engagement, and organizational design. She also serves as a general counsel for growth companies, helping them manage risks and capture opportunities. Welcome to the show today, Kate.
Hello, thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to share your story. You have quite a background and quite a few accomplishments. So let's start at the beginning though. Where are you from? Let's talk a bit about education and take us along your career path.
Sure. So I'm born and raised in Connecticut. I've got one older brother and two adorable nephews that are 10 and 12 now. I started out my career probably around high school, college. I started thinking about what I wanted to do. And I went to Colby College in Maine. I wanted the snow and the cold. I played ice hockey in high school, and I wanted to play in college. Yes, so
that's unique. That's really cool.
Well, actually, in high school, I was an ice hockey player and I danced. So I would be running between practices and then running to put makeup on and dancing. So it was
those are very, very different sports.
Yes.
But I understand. So interesting. I have to pause there because I have my ex for a long time was avid ice hockey player, adult men's league stuff, and I tried to get out there a couple times, and that is so hard, so difficult. So kudos to you. That's amazing.
Yes, thank you. My town started a Learn to Skate for girls in 7th grade. And so I started with that. And then I went to a prep school that had a women's varsity team. And so I got to play all 4 years of high school and college, which was great.
Awesome.
And then somewhere along the way in college, I decided I wanted to be a sports agent. No idea. I love sports. I wanted to be around athletes. I just thought it would be a great job. And somebody told me, you have to be good at contracts and you have to be a lawyer. And so I said, fine, I'll be a lawyer. Works for me. And so I took the LSATs. I went off to law school in Brooklyn, and I spent my first year, and I let somebody talk me out of the sports agent route. I have no idea to this day why never again have I let somebody talk me out of something that I wanted, but it was supposed to be difficult to travel if you wanted a family, and it was a very nepotism type of field, and so it was better if I chose a different path, which was fine. I ended up going down the route of corporate law. I joined a big firm. I did mergers and acquisitions for a year and a half, 2 years, and then I said, I don't want to be that document turner lawyer for the rest of all time. I don't want to be working at 2:00 in the morning when I have my kids. And so how do I sort of carve my own path? And we had one senior partner who focused on corporate governance. So how boards work and accountability and how they communicate with shareholders. And he got one associate to work for him. And I went and became that associate, and he was a little challenging, but I made it. And it was a lot of speech writing and private market policy that was being brought to Washington, a lot of special projects. So it was not a typical legal career. And so when I thought about where do I go next, I was at a round table about the capital markets, and I heard this gentleman speak about what is known as active hedge funds. And they blend a lot of corporate governance and investments. And it sounded intriguing to me. I thought maybe that's the next step. I yanked his email address from the partner's Rolodex, and it was an actual Rolodex. And I shot off an email asking if he'd get on a call with me and just talk about making that transition. It was the middle of the financial crisis, pretty much right as it started. And to his credit, he wrote back within a month and set up a meeting in the middle of the downfall. I flew out to San Diego, and he offered me a position as general counsel. It was a $6 billion fund. Similar funds of that size had much more experienced general counsels. I was the youngest by far. It was a great opportunity. I said, nothing's really holding me in New York, and so why not move across the country? I don't know anyone, but this could be fun. It's different. So I went, and I was their general counsel for about 5 years. I came back to New York, and I did some more work around that same type of activism, both from the corporate side and back again with the hedge funds. And then in 2016,
can I pause on that before we go on to the next step here? Talk a little more about the industry, because, you know, we hear the phrase hedge fund, and I don't know that a lot of people really understand what it is. So anything you want to explain that might help our listeners understand, you know, the type of work the company was doing.
Sure. So, you know, generally for a hedge fund, you're taking other people's money, whether that's high net worth individuals or pension funds or institutional money, and you're investing it in companies that you think you can create value. You can help create value, and you make money off that difference, that return, the increase in value that comes from when you buy it to when you sell off. Hedge funds get a good and bad rap. You know, people have different views about them. Our fund was all about investing and working with the team to create value. So we were right alongside the executives and the board, which is how governance came up. And so, you know, I got to work on the investment side a little bit. I did some business development. I did a lot of policy in Washington. And so again, here was me with a non-typical legal role again.
Yeah. And in general, somebody would put their money with a hedge fund over just, you know, throwing it in the S&P, because you're hopefully going to get their bigger returns, right, than
absolutely
what they would get in the quote unquote typical market. So
exactly. It's definitely riskier, but there's the potential for a higher return.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you for clarifying that. All right, Kate. So 2016, what was that?
I up and quit at the end of 2016. I had no plan in place. I had a hedge fund size mortgage I had just taken on in 2015. And I said, I just never loved any of this. I was 37. I thought, if I don't make a change now, I won't ever make a change. And I wanted something that challenged me, and I wanted to learn every day, and I wanted something that felt a little bit more fulfilling. And so I started looking around, and I didn't know what that was. And I'll be honest, it took the first 6 months of 17 to really let go of that prior life and that notion of success and the paycheck and the prestigious title. And so I started interviewing for jobs sort of around what I did, and I realized I wasn't trying very hard at the interviews. And so it probably was time to just wipe the slate and start over. And I joined a co-working space. I started going to events. I was really into the future economy, and people inevitably started asking me legal questions. And so I was introduced to a gentleman who had started a boutique law firm the year before, and it focused just on startups and high growth companies. And so I said, why not? This could be the next step to something. I don't know what that is. And I went and I started with them at the end of 17. And we worked with all sorts of startups, from early stage formation to companies being acquired or acquiring other companies and everything in between. across industries. And it was a great exposure to the startup community and to this, founder, passionate type of person that I really enjoyed working with and being around. And I loved it. I continue to do some legal work. My passion as of last year kind of morphed into this helping of female founders scaling their businesses. Mm-hmm. I was kind of looking around at clients. I saw clients that weren't able to scale. I try to be part of the business when I'm general counsel anyway, so that I truly understand the business and the business objectives. And I kind of saw some things that were falling apart. And I did a lot of research, and I started to see that a big piece was founders don't transition into CEOs very well and go from that it's my baby notion to it's a real business and I've got to manage and develop talent and leadership and external to stakeholders. And I think they struggle with that transition. And I think it's all about the people and how you engage your team. And so I chose to focus and move on to helping female founders. And part of it is the dismal statistics that I was reading that 88% of female founders never make more than $100,000 in revenue, or female founders get less than 3% of venture capital dollars. They were all, not great stats. And I wanted to change that. And I wanted to give back, having come from a male-dominated industry that I navigated successfully, that the startup world still is very much male-dominated, the VC world. And so I thought this would be a place where all of my experiences, from both legal to right hand to a CEO or a partner, could come together, and it would be the best leverage of everything I wanted to do and what I was good at.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow, there's so much to unpack there. So I want to go back a little bit. I have talked to so many attorneys, Kate, and many, who are members of Hera Hub and just part of my network in general, who, much like you, did the corporate, law thing and said, eventually, this is not for me. Some do it sooner than later. I had been told, we have here in San Diego, and you may be familiar with it since you were here for a few years, it's called the Lawyers Club of San Diego, and it's a female-focused organization. I was told by the president of the Lawyers Club recently that female attorneys have the lowest job, corporate female attorneys have the lowest job satisfaction rating. Something to the tune of that, meaning, what she was saying is just the hours, the stress levels, the functionality of maybe what she was talking about, maybe more traditional big law firms, it can be so, I don't know, just almost toxic that you see so many women going out on their own, as, in the legal profession. Thoughts, feedback,
that's
your perspective on that.
That's an interesting statistic. And I can see how it can be true.
She said like 10%, so 90%, 10% happiness level basically is what she quoted.
Wow.
But 90% of corporate female attorneys say they are not happy in their position. Like, good Lord, like some of these big law firms need to change that somehow, to retain this amazing talent.
Right. There's a lot of there's a lot of systemic problems for sure. Yeah. I mean, you've got a ton of women coming out of law school. I think it's more than men at this point. They start at these big firms, but they fall off a few years in. And part of that is having kids. Part of that is just the job isn't fulfilling, or they're not getting recognized the same. I think there's probably a host of reasons, but they don't make it, as flexible as you would think. You could say, here's a 4-day week for you after having kids, but the expectation is still that you're going to do 5 days work. So yeah. I think, law firms themselves have a long way to go. I think in-house is very different on many levels, and it depends on the type of company you go to. So, maybe they were all law firm attorneys, but most attorneys or many attorneys don't love being attorneys. So, that's probably true of most men too. So, I don't know how much is female specific.
Yeah, Yeah, absolutely. Well, it can be a tough field. I mean, depending on what type of law you practice, we have a few members who, did lots of litigation work for years, and they just, they're like, I never want to litigate again. I mean, I can only imagine how challenging some of those situations can be.
Yeah. And, as I moved on and it was hedge fund law, I was in rooms where I was the only female at the table out of 15, 10, 20 people. And I was very young at the time. And so that was also a challenge to build credibility and have your voice be heard in a room that it's easy to be drowned out. So, you had to kind of have that confidence in yourself and your judgment and speak up. And that took practice.
Absolutely. Was there any situation, I just want to ask for, specifics that you can recall in any of these roles where you really felt challenged, perhaps, being, the only woman in the room?
I don't know that I felt challenged. I always felt rather comfortable. I think the challenge for me was this balance in figuring out what I was going to do next and sort of what the thread was in my career. It was serving as a right hand to the powerful CEO or the senior partner. I was a great sounding board, strategic advisor. That's a good role for me. As I went through my career and I knew I wanted to go on to other things, the challenge was kind of coming out behind the shadows of those men. And that was hard. I think at that point, the dynamic was there, but they also wanted that protector, I'm out front role, and finding my way to have my own brand and be my own person was a challenge.
I see. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. So let's talk a few minutes here, take a deeper dive into your business. You really described your partner with the entrepreneur, helping them scale, look at all aspects of their business, almost like, it sounds like a bit of risk mitigation too, helping them think through what the future might look like. Are there any particular industries or types of entrepreneurs? I know you focus on women, but industries or, again, certain, I don't know. I'm not coming up with anything better than types at the moment. I apologize, but
sure,
you know where I'm going, of entrepreneurs that you really like to work with.
Yeah, so, I think I've done a lot in the consumer products, e-commerce, and ed tech. It's across industries. I have not done much in the SaaS world, VR or AI space. Kind of interested in cannabis. I haven't done a lot in that space, but I'm happy to work across industries. I think the joy of my job now is that I get to work with passionate people, but I also get to deep dive into companies and understand them. And so I'm always learning, which is awesome. In terms of type of company, the later stage companies that are trying to really grow their revenue from 500 to a million to 5 million, let's say, that's where I have the most value. It's when you're that high growth mode that founders usually plateau at, and there's this point where they can't get past, and it's helping them, whether you're doubling the size of your team, you took on a huge client, you just got funding from a VC, and how do you spend that money? It's all of those like big steps to quick scale that founders run into trouble and plateau. And so my goal is to help them through that period. And so, I look more at stage of company, and that doesn't have to be VC funded, but most companies aren't. So really we're talking just about growth companies. And there are tons of growth companies that are doing very well. And so focusing on those makes a lot of sense for what I'm doing.
Awesome. Love it. So talk about maybe some of the things you have coming up that you're working on. Anything exciting that you're looking forward to in your business?
I'm happy with clients. I love taking on new clients. So I think we've got a few challenges. I've got a client that COVID kind of sped up the business. So I think this is a fun ramp up. And so that's exciting. And, doing more with my social media. So it's an area of focus that's, just like any founder, I have my things I have to work on as well. And so that's an area of focus for me in the coming months.
Awesome. And Kate, exactly where is your practice? I know you've got New York on your LinkedIn and info, but are you in the city proper?
I am in the city proper.
Okay.
Obviously, all my work though is Zoom, so I can work with people anywhere. I've got a client in the UK. So, but I am in New York. I go to Connecticut to visit family on the weekends, but I'm back on the East Coast and settled in here and still have the apartment I bought. So holding on.
Okay. Holding on. Yes, exactly. I love New York, and I'm excited to get back there when the whole world comes back to some semblance of normal. It's such a great city.
Yes.
Energy. I miss it.
It's helpful when you've got to be in that hustle mode. It definitely supports that.
For sure. Awesome. Well, Kate, if our listeners want to get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Shoot me an email. So my email is Kate, Kate, at the number 8, Carney, CARNEY.com. Or you can reach me on Instagram at k8.carney.
And I failed to ask, what's the 8?
My own take on spelling Kate, because Kate is taken everywhere. So
got it. I should have. That's like so obvious. I should have seen it.
Not until you say it out loud a few times.
I'm like, yeah, of course.
Exactly.
Gotcha. Awesome. Well, wonderful. Well, Kate, thank you so much for your time. I've really enjoyed getting to know you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's fun.
Thank you for joining this week's episode of Flight Club, sponsored by Hera Hub. We look forward to sharing more success stories with you soon.